best driver's car. Now, everybody on staff all year looks forward to this competition the most.
We get to drive some of the world's greatest new performance cars flat out on the road and on the track.
And we get to find out which one of them is the best driver's car. Picking the best driver's car means finding the car that best marries the chassis and the powertrain. It's the one that's most engaging to drive. It's the one that allows you to reach your own limits and the car's. It's the car that encourages you the most.
The contenders for the best driver's car competition are picked from all the new or upgraded high-performance cars launched in the 12 months prior to the test.
The first part of Best Driver's Car starts on a closed section of Highway 198. The street portion is very important because it allows us to see what the car behaves like when you push it hard on the road. We close the road not so we can cross both lanes and do drifts and burnouts and stuff, but we want to be able to push these cars hard in a safe environment where we can repeat each performance.
This section of Route 198 includes lots of tricky off-camber corners and vicious mid-turn lumps and bumps that really test steering and suspension to the limit. The uphill run tests performance of the powertrain and the transmission. And when you're coming downhill, you're really working the brakes and the stability control systems hard.
A car that's good on this road will be good on any road.
Downhill traffic.
I'm about to get into the Jaguar F-Type, and you know I've spent most of my professional career waiting for this car to arrive. It looks light, small, nimble, agile. But is it really going to be the 911 fighter Jaguar has always promised it would be?
Well, I must have been writing about the Jaguar F-Type for 20 years, but I can tell you, it's been worth the wait. This thing is fabulous. The V8 howls, lots of power. It really does punch out of corners. Ton of grip. It's a very agile car too. It's like no Jag I've ever driven. There is no delay in the response. Pull the wheel off center and it dives for the apex.
It's been a long, long time since a Jaguar has felt this visceral, this thrilling as the F-Type.
It feels a little wayward in the tail. The stability control is working on the road. It's just getting a little bit hot later in the afternoon and the road surface is starting to get a little slippery. And you can feel the tail of this thing coming around. I wonder, on the track with all the nannies turned off, what it's going to be like. But here on the road, it's terrific. It might be the best Jaguar sports car ever.
You know, our testing director, Kim Reynolds, came back from driving the F-Type in Spain saying that the V8 was an engine too far for the car. It had too much power, and you know, I think he's right. You're getting the sense that this car's always on the edge, that the engine is always about to overwhelm it. I don't know what it's going to be like on the track.
Oh, the poor Ford Focus. It seems to be the runt of this group. It's the lowest power. It has economy car roots. I mean, it's front drive. It just has a manual. There's no fancy twin clutch option. But it's still here in this group, and that speaks to the driving dynamics of the car. this smile? That's what happens whenever I drive a Focus ST. There is just some plucky, go happy, do anything sort of character that just fills you when you drive this car. You have a fair amount of torque given the price, 270 pound-feet of torque, and you feel every bit of that as you go through the power band. Backing that torque is a really, really nice amplified induction note. I simply love throwing this car around, really beating on it. It may have the lowest power of any car here, but I bet the cornering speeds are about the same as some of the other high power cars. One of my favorite parts about this car is the steering. Not the feel, it doesn't have a lot of feel, but it has a quickness and a precision that's unmatched in any car in this price range. This thing is definitely down on horsepower versus the rest of the segment. I mean, our average horsepower is above 500 this year. This thing only has 252 or something like that. So we're way down on power. But I think the cornering speeds are actually going to be pretty similar. And I think the smiles in this car are going to be bigger. The Focus is definitely outgunned here. It's a knife in a gunfight that's made of cardboard that's also soggy, but I love driving it.
The next car for me is the Porsche 911 Carrera 4S. Now I know this car is going to be good because it's so closely related to last year's Best Drivers Car winner, the Carrera 2S. But I wonder whether the four-wheel drive system, which adds a bit of extra weight, is going to slow the car down, and also whether it's going to take some of the clarity away from the steering.
Listen to that noise. It sounds like you're on Mulsanne Straight at Le Mans. It's the beauty of 911s. PDK is fantastic. I mean, if you want to drive fast, it's the only transmission. The shifts are so crisp, instantaneous. The 911 rides really, really well. The body motions are very well controlled. This corner through here, lumps, bumps, but you know exactly where the car's going to land. There's this precision.
You can tell the 911 has been designed by engineers who've been racing at Le Mans for decades. It feels bulletproof.
I was a bit worried that this car would feel less communicative than the two-wheel drive version, but you know, I'm liking it. Grip is good. When you're near the limit, you can feel the front end helping pull you out of the turns. I'm really liking this car.
The 911 felt so accomplished on the road. It's not a point-and-squirt supercar. It flowed down the road like liquid mercury, seamlessly stitching together the transients as it went through the turns.
I know the R8 and I love the R8. And I'm looking at it thinking, maybe I wasn't a big fan of the last generation, but this new one with a dual clutch is fantastic. I mean, what's not to like about a mid-engine, purpose-built V10 sports car? This car is, in a word, electrifying. You have such a great sense of control over the speed, over how the car drives. You never get the sense that this car is gonna surprise you or do something you don't want it to do. It's just a willing, like, dance partner. The ride quality, yes, this is a supercar. It's gonna have some impacts, but on smooth roads, it's phenomenal. I'm really impressed on the freeway when you're just cruising with this thing, how soft and comfortable it is. And then you get it on a mountain road, start rolling through some gear, start getting to the throttle, and I like it a lot. A lot. It's not just the speed of the R8, but the way it urges you to drive harder. It doesn't tell you any warning signs. It never tells you to slow down. It's just constant driving bliss. Oh. The torque feels like a magnet just pulling you forward, sucking you in. There's a smoothness to the way it accelerates. There's a smoothness to the way it turns in. It's very fast when you're doing all that stuff. But that smoothness is addicting. It's like everything's just coated in velvet. The combination of the sound the R8 makes, as well as the driving dynamics, the styling, how comfortable it is, and how it urges you to drive faster, make it one of the best all-around sports cars.
The next car up for me is the Bentley Continental GT Speed. Now, it's the fastest production Bentley in history, so I know it's going to be a blast to drive, but I also know it weighs over 5,100 pounds, and when you start driving it hard, it's going to be a fight against the physics.
I can tell you right now, this is not best driver's car. It's just too big, 5,100 pounds. And you do feel those pounds when you're pushing the Bentley through a corner. It tends to understeer, but you get on the gas and the thing digs and grunts and hauls out. You arrive at corners carrying enormous speed in this car. I mean, squeeze the gas pedal and it's like opening the floodgates on the Hoover Dam. It just surges and surges and surges almost without end. It's an incredible powertrain.
The Bentley makes you smile. You just can't believe something this heavy can be that fast.
But all that mass, you can't argue with the laws of physics. When you do arrive at those corners, you've got to wash off a lot of speed, and the brakes take a real pounding. Still, this car makes you smile. You just can't believe that you're traveling as fast on a winding road as you're traveling in this Bentley Continental GT. It seems to defy all rationality, and that's what I love about it.
You can't argue with old Isaac Newton. Driving this car fast was a bit like waltzing with a fat lady. You couldn't change directions suddenly.
You look at the E63 and your expectations start getting pretty low. I mean, it's a station wagon. What's it doing in a best driver's car competition? Well, it has well above 500 horsepower, and it's put together by the guys at AMG who know a thing or two about making good driving cars. Oh my God. And then you drive it and you realize, my God, does this thing have an engine? And it holds the road decently too. It's a very typically German driving experience, the hammer on the road. And despite the amount of power and the amount of torque that you have on tap, there's decent traction. And we can't say that about another similarly powered German entrant here, the M6. This thing makes so much power, and it has a 7-speed twin clutch, but it makes so much power you think you only need one gear, maybe two at max. It's incredible. The steering feel is not great, if I'm perfectly honest. It doesn't feel very connected to the road. I mean, sure, it goes where you point it. I'm not concerned about it or anything. It just doesn't have that natural feeling that a sports car should have. Again, not that this is a sports car, this is a very fast, very capable station wagon. I'm surprised really at how adept this thing is going down a road, but I'm not in love with the engine sound. Sure, it sounds imposing, it's impressive, deep burbling, but it doesn't have the scream, the soulful sound that I really want to hear when I get on the throttle. You notice more that sinking feeling in your stomach more than you do the sound. You notice the torque more than anything else, and there is so much of it. Ugh. We just killed a squirrel. No, he's alive! Woohoo! It's the sheer absurdity that makes the E63 so admirable and surprising, although I find myself ending every sentence praising it with, for a wagon.
My next car is the Nissan GTR Track Edition. And you know, I've done a lot of miles in GTRs over the years, so there's only one real question with this car. How much more performance have the Nissan engineers been able to wrench out of the GTR? How much more has Godzilla got to give?
It's impossible not to be impressed by a GTR every time you get in one. Just that thrust. From corner to corner, this thing is staggering. It'll destroy any canyon road you care to name. It's a very short geared car too. I mean, this thing tends to run out of breath above 120 miles an hour. But the ride there, now that's exciting. It's a remarkable piece of engineering, this car. You can't help feeling there's some sort of black magic going on because, you know, on paper it doesn't add up. It shouldn't be as fast as it is.
Grip, grunt and gearing means there probably isn't a quicker car on a tight canyon road than a Nissan GTR.
The track pack gives you stiffer springs and dampers, and while the ride's marginal around town, on these sorts of roads, and particularly this 198 with these big lumps and bumps, the track pack suspension setup does a really good job of controlling the car. No wonder they call this thing Godzilla. It just eats roads.
You know, there were no real surprises here, just more of everything that makes a GTR such a phenomenal car.
The Cayman would seem to have the winning philosophy here. It's mid-engine, it's light and low. The whole reason it exists is for driving satisfaction. That's the only reason you buy a Cayman. You crack the wheel on a moderate speed corner and you just instantly feel the low center of gravity, a low polar moment. I mean, mid-engine sports cars really are what it's all about. If there's one thing I love about this Cayman, it's the sound. That is the sweetest sound. That's what a sports car should sound like. The steering is very precise, very easy to control. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything because we don't have a hydraulic power steering system. I still have all the control I could possibly want in this car. And even though it's down 75 horsepower from the 911, that's okay. I'm fine with that. This is enough. This is just right. This is a car you want to drive hard and fast. You want to find excuses to take it on curvy roads. But it's strange, it has this uncanny ability to make you push harder, and it always seems to be capable of letting you have a little bit more grip, a little bit more fun. Now we have the PDK twin clutch transmission, Porsche's Doppelkuppengetriebe, I don't know how you pronounce it. And it's a pretty solid match for this powertrain. I'd be really interested to drive this car with a manual to see what it feels like, but this PDK is making a very, very, very good case for itself. The engagement is smooth, it's how you would do it if you were driving a manual, and the gear changes happen so quick. It just gives you such a finer control over the car when you're going down the road. The Cayman more than makes up for whatever power deficit it has with its outright balance and finesse.
Next up, the SLS AMG Black Series. Now, you know, the regular SLS is stupendously fast in a straight line, but a little snappy on the limit. Here's the thing, the C63 Black Series was the sensation of last year's Best Drivers Car competition. So it's going to be interesting to find out whether the AMG engineers have been able to work that black magic on this one.
I love this naturally aspirated 6.2 litre V8. I'm going to be really sorry to see it go from the AMG lineup. It's a wonderful engine. 622 horsepower, 7,400 RPM. It loves to rev, and the noise it makes, just wonderful.
You know, if they ever build an engine hall of fame, AMG's naturally aspirated 6.2 litre V8 deserves pride of place. You know, it's a wonderful engine, amazing performance, super crisp throttle response, and then of course there's that soundtrack, that booming wall of V8 thunder.
The SLS is a big car, but the guys from AMG have worked some of their Black Series magic on this one. It feels way more agile, more planted than the regular SLS. More so even than the SLS GT. The thing really turns into corners well, lots of front end bite. The brakes, of course, massive carbon ceramic brakes. You can just grenade them and this thing stops. There seems to be plenty of traction through the corner too. The SLS has a habit of being rather tail happy. We'll wait and see what it's like on the track, but out here on the road, it feels pretty well behaved.
Heroic, epic, invincible, shock and awe meets hammer of the gods. That's what the SLS Black Series felt like. It felt like a car that could cross continents in a single bound, leaving you stirred but not shaken at the other end.
Oh, the Viper. You know, as hard as SRT has worked to dispel this car's Widowmaker status, you hop in it, you turn it on, and it's still the gruff, uncomfortable, uncompromising machine that you remember the last car being. I mean, even for a sports car, the cabin's tight, it's loud. It tells you, hey, be careful. And this car makes you very aware of certain things. Your speed, the road, how bumpy and stiff it is, your placement in the road, again, your speed. Did I mention your speed? I have a tough time thinking straight driving this car because I'm thinking about everything else, how bumpy it is, how rough it is, how loud it is, how raw it is. People like to talk about how great this car is because of how raw it is and pure it is, but I can't hear them because I can't hear anything. The engine is insane. Monstrous could describe it. Incredible could describe it. It makes more power than I'd ever know what to do with. There's so much horsepower and torque coming out of this thing. I just wish it sounded a little bit nicer. The Viper is very stiff. Very, 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 very stiff. Unless you're on the smoothest of pavements, you know it whenever you hit a bump. Or a dead squirrel. And then you drive the Viper hard, really hard, and you realize that it all works. You learn to trust it, and you can start pushing it harder and asking it for more. But then things start falling apart, literally. Speed, this car is so phenomenally fast, 640 horsepower. Let's give it a taste. Whoa! Something literally just flew off the hood. Hood vent, and that's only the start.
So next up is the BMW M6. Now when you look at the spec sheet, it's clear this is a big, heavy, complex car. And I'm wondering, you know, that's not what M cars used to be. It's going to be very interesting to find out whether this is an M car too far.
Well, this car really shows how BMW's M division has really changed direction. I mean, M cars used to have engines that screamed. They used to feel light on their feet. They used to really excite you. This car is very, very fast, but it just feels heavier, more deliberate.
It's got truly staggering power. I mean, nail the gas in fourth gear in a straight line and you'll get the traction control light flashing.
Brakes are great, and it turns into the corner pretty well. Pretty composed over the bumps too. But you know, it reminds me of the 850 CSI, and I remember driving that car in France 20 years ago or more. And BMW decided it wasn't going to be an M car because it was just too big and too heavy. Well, this is what that 850 CSI felt like. A big, heavy, fast car.
Ironically, this car felt more like something AMG might build. M cars used to be about finesse, you know, Munich's Mozart versus AMG's Wagner, but not anymore. In the new M6, you bludgeon the road into submission.
I'm walking up to the Aston Martin Vanquish, and this car is promising a lot. You look at the way it's shaped, it's absolutely beautiful, and you know it has the right formula. Big V12, rear-wheel drive. This thing should be an absolute blast. That is a nice sound. That is it. That is it. It feels like there's a lot of cars surrounding you, and in a way that's kind of intimidating, but there is a nice amount of control throughout this car. The steering's actually quite nice. It's not too quick, but it is nicely balanced. It has a precision that makes this car easy to point around, even though it is big. The strange thing is that the Aston doesn't feel like it wants to be driven like a sports car, and I'm going to put some of the blame on the transmission, the automatic 6-speed. It seems to be calibrated in a way that doesn't make it enjoyable to climb through the rev band. You want to be able to hear that V12 sing, and the transmission doesn't seem to want to let you do that, and it holds back the experience as a result. This isn't a car, though, that I want to drive very hard. I don't want to push this car to its limit. I want to just take it easy and cruise. I want to relax a bit more, enjoy the experience a bit more, roll down the windows, smell the air. It doesn't seem to want to do limit performance as much as some of the other contenders here. I get out of the Aston and I think that there's a disconnect with this car. You see it parked and you think, yeah, supercar, but you drive it and you realize, no, it wants to be a grand touring car.
With our road loops complete, our next stop is Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca. This is where we can put all the contenders against the clock, getting absolutely comparable data points under identical circumstances.
Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca is a really interesting arrangement of corners of varying speeds and heights. There's stomach-churning drops, really tight corners, and also really fast sweepers. It's technical and demanding, and that's why we have Randy Popes do all the lapping for us.
Randy's won at Daytona and has the rare ability among race drivers to not only find the limits of a car's performance within a couple of laps, but also give great subjective feedback to go with the objective data collected by Kim Reynolds and the MotorTrend test team.
Into turn one, got tire noise on braking. Shifter is accurate, but it doesn't feel real mechanical. Little bit of push through the middle of the corner, and some wheel spin on the way off. Good torque, little bit of torque steer into turn three. Nice rotation. That's my favorite thing about the Focus ST. Focus on the straightaway has really good torque for a little engine, but it's not pulling well at high RPM. I started shifting a lot sooner. I was going to redline, which is 6,500, and it seems to be happier to shift way down about 6,000. Up the hill to 6. Good power for a little four-banger through turn 6. And on the initial laps, the Focus ST has a tremendous rotation, entry rotation, which is what I really loved about it when we tested it at Streets of Willow. Nice drift on the way in. I love when the tail comes out on the entry. Heading into turn 3. Look at that sideways correction. I love that. Overall, the car feels kind of a little soft here at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca. It's got a fair amount of roll, and the bumps are like non-existent because it's soft and it just soaks them right up. So it doesn't have a real precise feel. Up to the corkscrew, back in the brakes. We got a fair amount of roll. Focus is a little soft, flying over the top of the corkscrew. Feel a bit of torque steer there when we land. It kind of jumps around. A lot of braking power, but it's kind of long travel on the pedal, and it's not easy to be precise with it. I found it an enjoyable car. I've driven a lot of front drives. Well, no, it was enjoyable while it was drifting. But once something changed, when everything got good and heated up, it became just an understeerer, and it lost that in terrific entry rotation that it had originally. I'm liking this Cayman. It's accurate. It reminds me of a good race car. Just enough rotation on entry. Could use 100 pounds more torque.
Cayman S, so?
Fabulous. I mean, it's really so well balanced. It's a fabulous car. Firmly damped. It just feels just right. Not too stiff, not too soft.
You didn't like the damping on the road yesterday?
No, I didn't. I'll tell you what, the bumps are way bigger on the road.
Sure.
Here, so the Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca is very, very smooth, except for turn 6, 1 or 2 places. And the damping here is just fabulous. Good stability through turn 6. Porsche is well damped. The car's not a drifter, but it gets just this nice
Tiniest
balance.
bit, yeah.
Oh, yeah. My turn 2 on the last lap was just perfection. Just eased out of the brakes. The tail came out. It was just beautiful. It's got a racy feel. You know, like they say about Porsches, it's a racy feel. Just the right rotation. You see that? Don't have much wheel in the car. Doesn't feel that powerful in this group.
No, it's not.
You know, it's not. It's
I think it's the second
325.
least powerful one
Is it?
here. Yeah.
Is it? I bet the lap time was pretty good anyway, though. I sure don't slow down much for the corners. I don't have to.
Yeah.
It's so well behaved.
Yeah. You feel like you can do anything with it?
Yeah, I felt like I can do almost exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Entering the front straightaway in the Jag. Power oversteer at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca. We're in the Jaguar F-Type. Powerful car. We are moving down this straightaway. Up into 5th gear. On the brakes, good pedal feel, good braking, liking it. Little rotation into the corner, big understeer in the middle. Power oversteer on the exit. Wow, it's smoking them.
So how did the F-Type do?
Well, it's actually the most fun I've had in a loose car in a while. It's definitely a power oversteer car, and it needs to be driven really smoothly with a gentle throttle foot, and it's actually a lot of fun. I tell you got to be judicious with your power application because it knocks her sideways. Nice drift out of 10. It's kind of a lot of fun, but it's not easy. You got to get it just right. You drive it with a light touch. You don't want to muscle this car around. It doesn't respond well to that at all. You release the brake and just give it a little steering input and then go to throttle, and the throttle balances it.
Yeah.
If you're not in the throttle yet, it can generate a pretty big push.
Okay.
And if you generate that big push and then go to power, then it really wants to come around.
Right.
You know, I'm noticing a difference between turn in and power. Look, but get in the corner, push, look at that wheel, and then exit, power, oversteer. Ooh, that's got to look good on camera though.
How confident are you in it though, particularly say through a faster
corner, like
Not-
coming down off.
Not terribly.
Yeah,
Not terribly. More so than the M6,
yeah,
but not terribly confidence-inspiring, because there's a pretty big transition between how it behaves off throttle and how it behaves on throttle. When you go on throttle, you got a whole different animal.
yeah,
It's an oversteerer.
yeah.
But when it's off throttle, it has a tendency to want to understeer.
Yeah.
The default mode of the Jag is oversteer. Look at that correction. Brake pedal travel is long. We're into turn 1, turn 2. Second gear has a little tendency to power oversteer. We might notice that more than a little.
Great sounding, great looking car around the track. How did it feel?
I love the sounds that it makes. It sometimes felt just a wee bit ponderous.
Yeah.
I think the ponderous feeling for me comes from a little bit of a reluctance to turn in
Yep.
late in the corner,
Yep.
and then quite a bit of understeer through the middle of the corner.
Yep.
Combined with some noticeable roll, but that at least that's very stable.
Yeah.
The steering response is kind of slow, and then look at this push through the middle of turn 4. But it's stable, and it puts the power down really well in the upper gears, like 3rd and 4th. Wow, I think I like this car. It's a drifter. I was not able to brake real accurately with the car. Like, I didn't know exactly when they were going to come on. With the Aston, there's a long squish, like stepping on a pillow. And so the application is not real directly related to the braking,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Normally, I want to brake at the 325 and boom, start that braking right there. With this car, you kind of go, and
It's a bit of laziness in the car.
Laziness.
Like the steering and the braking, even on the hill yesterday, the car felt just lazy. And then the transmission, which
Yes,
is
yes.
slow.
We heard you popping the limiter a few times.
I did not miss. I merely had to learn that in 2nd to 3rd, I have to pull the lever 500 RPM early.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mature sports car. That's what I'm going to call it as I do my lap in the corkscrew. Blasting off the hill, pulling 3rd gear.
Really smooth into the oversteer, right?
Smoothly into the oversteer, and it's a fun thing to use for the camera. I did it on purpose. It was kind of fun. I was hoping you were watching.
Yeah, we saw that
We got
one.
some
we saw
nice
it. We
saw that
rotations, and the last one was big on purpose. And that was the playful nature of it.
Yeah.
That's the big girl that can dance part. A lot of roll, even in the sports setting. This is a comfort-oriented car. Nice rotation. The Bentley likes a little bit of trail brake, but it's not at home on the racetrack environment. Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca is not where this car is happiest.
Randy, that's 5,200 pounds worth of Bentley flinging around Monster Raceway. What do you think?
Splendid.
Quite.
In 1928, the straightaways were very long at Le Mans. And for that, this Bentley is perfect.
But the corners.
Yeah,
the corners.
corners are a problem.
There's a couple of those here.
Well, it's not a bloody race car.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I had a ball.
Yeah.
Over the hill, you can't even really tell the car's gaining speed. As you might expect, all the weight is evident down here in turn 2. The traction is good off the corner. But the Bentley does generate a lot of momentum,
Yep.
a lot of weight, a lot of power, and I found myself having to do everything a lot earlier. And I was thinking of you when you talked about the Focus. In fact, you have to turn
Yeah.
earlier. The Bentley's that way.
Yeah.
You have to slow it down early, and it stops actually pretty well. And into the corkscrew. Stops really well. Get in that tight corner and launch it over the top. All four wheels driving, soaking up those bumps. And the tires make a lot of noise.
Yes, we could hear.
They're P-Zeros? Yeah, they're working hard.
Screamers, huh?
And you can feel the mass when you enter a corner. The car, even in full sport mode, is still quite soft. It's a comfort-oriented car. And I had to turn real early. It actually responded really well to a little trail brake.
Yes.
Oh, really?
I could even get the thing to rotate. In fact, it needed it,
Yeah.
doesn't
yeah,
it?
Yeah.
You had to give it a little trail brake, and it would do this sort of Titanic sort of.
But it
But
builds
it-
speed amazingly well, doesn't it? It just
was just like a jet aircraft, really, or more like a tsunami.
Yeah.
You know, it just comes, and it's not a wave crashing. It's just,
The straights here are few and far between.
yeah. It would be a better car on a track with longer straights like Le Mans. Motor's pulling hard. The shifts are quick, really nice. Into turn 5. Different car in Sport Plus. Little oversteer as we power up the hill to 6. Makes some absolutely glorious noises.
yeah.
Makes some absolutely glorious power. Needs more tire or something. It will not hook up on power.
Yep.
It's a little bit of a loose car, and it's the first one I've only gone 2 laps with.
Yeah.
I didn't want to drive another lap. It's work, a difficult car to drive on the limit, both with some entry oversteer.
Yep.
Late in the
We
entry
noticed
section.
that down there.
It definitely will power oversteer down into 9. Get to that apex. Power oversteering off the corner. It's got a little oversteer on entry, a little push in the middle, and then quite a bit of power oversteer on the exit. Down into 11, on the gas. It spins them. It's a lot of fun, but it's not quick. Had a lot of rear rebound. I could feel it on the bumps.
Yeah.
Stiff.
Yeah.
Stiff suspension. That didn't seem to necessarily be what upset it, but not putting power down at all.
Unusual for an M car. It just seems completely out of character for an M car. Which used to engines that revved, good balance and
Lightweight.
lightweight.
This seems more like an AMG.
It is in some ways. But no, the AMGs nowadays are handling so well.
A few of them are.
Better than they used to be. Oh, okay. What an engine. This thing is running strong over the hill at turn 1, into the brake zone, hard on the brakes. It's a squishy pedal, but it's getting it stopped. Little push in the middle, big push in the middle. Down into 3. The car's not rolling much. Firm dampening. Motor's fabulous. Love the way it runs, love the power it makes. It was humping over the hill at turn 1.
Yeah.
It's the first car I've driven this weekend that gets my attention going over that hill. And I mean, it will power oversteer in 3rd gear.
Yeah.
And
That's some power.
part of that is just power. Yeah.
Well, we
it's
were
got a
finding
lot
that
of
on the
power.
road.
Yeah.
Just in MDM mode,
Yeah.
you would get the traction light strobing in 4th gear.
Every time I
Yeah.
look down at the dash, that light is ding, 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 ding.
Really?
It's
Yeah.
almost like the engine's overwhelming the chassis.
Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca, and the closest thing I've been into a race car, the 911.
Randy, the defending best driver's car champion from last year, is back now with all-wheel drive. What are your thoughts?
This 911 is by far the most like a race car.
Yeah.
No, not counting the Cayman, I forgot. Of anything we've driven. It is just, unlike the Bentley, which was definitely not at home here, the 911 is completely at home at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca. Man, sweet car, fluid through the corner, just makes it seamless. I could just drive it and drive it and drive it, and you know, I had the tool for the job. I had the right weapon, right, for this hunt.
Yeah.
And the all-wheel drive to me is invisible. I don't notice it. The car was surprisingly tail-happy.
Yeah.
But in a very usable way, not in a scary, I might crash this way, in an enjoyable way. It made me want to be a better driver and made me want to use it. Wow, it'll loosen up a little bit too. That's nice. The four-wheel drives used to tend to push at Porsche. Great steering, great brakes. Rotates into the corner. So I enjoyed the car so much, I came through here, instead of cooling off, I was going to do another time lap. And I had a beautiful turn 1, and then I got over aggressive in turn 3. Got all sideways there, but it's not a scary moment. The car is a car that can be driven on the edge without fear. And I really, really enjoy that part about it. Into the corkscrew, hard on the brakes, 2 quick downshifts. This is a tool, this is a weapon. The 911 is at home on the racetrack.
The thing that strikes me with this car in particular, and with the two-wheel drive 911 we had here last year, is that the way it stitches together the transients. This is a car that's not point and squirt and you stop, turn, then do something. You do a sequential series of steps to get it through the corner. This thing seems to be able to really round out and smooth out those transitions. It's like liquid.
It's a bit like writing in cursive.
Yeah, as opposed to dot matrix.
Yeah.
I hate to use the word driver's car, but that's what comes to my mind after having just driven it. It's such a nice tool. Nissan drives off the corners easily. It just puts that power down so nicely. 4-wheel drive. This car's got a little bit more understeer than I would have expected from it. I didn't think that we'd see that.
So the knock on the GTR always is that it's a video game car. There's not much driver involvement. Are you involved?
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with that here at Mazda Raceway because the risks are so high.
Yeah.
To have a car that is in control and grips so well all the time is a real benefit. Good power. That high-speed stability makes the GTR good in turn 6 as well. And I can talk. It's a nice track car setup because I have a lot of confidence in the car. I'm not stretching myself just to get speed out of it. Woo! Jump off that corkscrew.
Are you getting the feedback you want from the chassis? Can you tell what's going on, or is it the sensation of all the black magic going on, the wizardry going on in there that's helping you?
I don't have a sensation of electronics driving the car, but it's definitely a much more numb feeling because the last car I drove was the 911.
Yeah.
The 911 has much more direct connection driver to car, and the GTR that's more numbed down. But I don't think it reduces the speed any.
Does it reduce your ability to adjust the car?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not as adjustable, say, as the 911?
Oh no, not even close. Because the 911 actually was oversteering a fair amount, so I had to consciously drive it to minimize that, and it was always on that line dancing. The GTR just had a tendency to go into an understeer, and you're kind of waiting on it, and you end up a little frustrated.
So it's a little one-dimensional.
Today on this track. A well-behaved car, little tendency to get loose, through 9. Just got to look in and just balance the car just like that. Drivetrain is unbelievably wonderful.
Yeah.
The engine is just so mellifluous, and the shifts are the best yet of anybody. And it's not picky about when you do it either.
Right.
You know, like the Mercedes, if you don't get the right moment, there's that delay and then it hangs up. This car's not like that. It just beautiful and so smooth.
What about turning on and feeling it back through the steering? The Audi seems just a little bit numb. Were you getting enough feel?
Not once I backed off. No, I was really in love with the car on the track. Once I backed it off to where the tires were happy, I just think it was splendid. It was maybe the best.
Wow.
I think I like it better than the 911.
Wow.
Let's leave it in fourth for turn 6. Torque it up the hill. Wow, does it soak up that bump. Very, very nice deep suspension. Great shock control in the Audi R8. Into the corkscrew. Over the hill, soaking it up. The drivetrain made me very, very happy. Far superior to the 911 because of the power and the nice shifting. And the mid-engine configuration. I don't think there is the feel that there is in a Porsche, but there's that low polar moment that makes it so direct, the mid-engine feeling so direct, whereas the 911, it has that old...
You know the weight's back there.
Yeah, it has that tail wag. And which is kind of fun. This car would just make this beautiful... Was almost a drift, not quite. I hope the camera can catch it.
To me, the body control on the road on this car is pretty good. It's
incredible.
You know, it handles those big amplitude bumps really well. It's not phased by the mid-corner thing. The only real gripe I have with the car is just that slight lack of tactility through the steering wheel. You're not quite exactly sure what the front tire contact patch is doing.
I love a hot wagon, and this thing is rocking. Almost 600 pound-feet of torque. This will get the job done. Take you down to Whole Foods just like you need it. Down into the first corner. We're in a little hot. Best wagon ever. Love it. Really powerful. Handles well. More understeer than I like. It has lots of torque, lots of power. I don't notice any lag, not on the racetrack anyway. Glorious exhaust note. What a great exhaust note. I love the way it sounds. Down into turn 3. It's a very safe handling car, which seems appropriate. Fair amount of roll and a fair amount of understeer. It really likes that toss, even better toss and trail brake to get the tail to move, because when it does, it's just beautiful.
It's like driving a rally car. It really is like driving a rally car. Pitch it into the corner.
It needs to be driven like a rally car. Yeah. In fact, I tried it in 5, which has a long entry. I tried to just toss it, and what it wanted there was a
Scandinavian flick.
Scandinavian flick, yeah. Because you can get the tail moving, and it's a glorious car to drive. Really accurate steering, and the bumps are a non-issue. It's still a relatively compliant car. I always feel like I know exactly what's going to happen when I enter the corner in the AMG. Down into 6. Yeah, best car here in 6. Right through that bump and onto the power. Right to the edge of the curb. Easy to drive, one-handing it through the corners. No fear in the AMG wagon. And I love wagons. It's actually, it's my personal favorite just because since I was a kid, I've liked high-performance wagons. They just make sense to me. They go fast, and then they've got a little more room in them.
They're just cool.
Why not? This car has got the power, and it's worth driving it, let me tell you. It is a beast. Pulls a lot of G's. Very quick steering response in 4. Third gear, we're revving it out, 115, 120, into the brakes again. Little bit of nosedive, but it stops well. Apex it. We're digging out of turn 5, pulling up the hill in third gear. This car is very fast. And again, it's frightening.
Yeah.
As I'm going up that hill, I don't know what's going to happen when I go over the top. Because when the Viper gets light, or even worse, if you lift, like even to shift, it rotates about the center. There's a yaw.
Right.
Whoa, it's hard to keep it flat there. Nose is high. Down into turn 2, the brake pedal is firm. We're stopped. Little push in the middle. We're down to second gear. Little power oversteer on the way off. Boy, you do have a big wild snake by the hands when you're driving this thing. Let me tell you, it's quite powerful. Really accelerates hard at higher revs more.
Yeah.
I was very interested in how it came out of here. It's second gear, but it's low enough in the revs you don't have the big power.
Yeah.
So it never wants to do those monster rotations that some of the other cars did, like the Jaguar and the M6 and this one. I just mad at it. It just drove out of there, but it wasn't on the power band yet. Hard into the brakes. We got tall gearing in the last corner. We're kind of low in the revs in second gear, and it just drives off the corner at 4,000 RPM. I think the Viper, it generates a lot of G's. A lot of accelerated G's, a lot of braking G, a lot of cornering G, and the steering response is very quick. And those G's build up very quickly. So when you crack the wheel, boom, you got a lot of G's, just like that. And unlike like the Aston that just kind of lays over, and or the M6 that transfers weight quickly but doesn't generate the G's. It just starts sliding, front or the back. On the brakes, down to second gear. I'm starting to sweat. This is a lot of work. Good response on the entry. Working that wheel. Turn 2, putting the power down. It's got a lot of power, and it just feels like a fine piece of machinery. Good brake bite. Digging off the corners. Wow, the sounds are amazing. I love this big, normally aspirated engine.
So, the SLS Black Series.
Yeah, that's quite a car. Quite a car. It just runs smoothly through those gears with that sweet gearbox, banging them off. Going over turn 1 is a non-event.
We heard a little bit of spin. Did you notice any tire spin over one?
No, I didn't notice it.
Yeah, we heard the revs flare on one lap.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
We're good. Good. The shifts are incredible. Bang, bang. A very stable car. We get down in corner entry, we're right on the edge of what these Michelin street tires can handle.
Well, we're still waiting for Kim and Benson to crunch the numbers, but unofficially it looks like it's faster than the Viper by
Definitely.
A reasonable margin, but it's about
Sure felt
at least
faster.
3 seconds faster than the last SLS we had around here.
Oh, it's far better than the last SLS. That last SLS had tremendous power oversteer.
Yeah.
Whereas this car is putting power down much better.
But you would still get a bit of the wheel spin on power.
Oh yeah.
application, yeah.
Oh yeah.
That might just
But
be
you don't have
inherent
to
the
be as
car.
careful. It was
Okay.
instant on the old SLS. I mean, just a constant issue. Here, I was well into the power before it started to break free a little bit. Brake bite is fantastic. Corkscrew, turning it in, jumping over the top.
But in terms of, say, confidence in the chassis, confidence in what it's going to do, how's this?
Scale of 1 to 10, I'd put the Viper really at about a 3, and I would put this car at about a 7.
Obtaining fastest lap at Laguna Seca doesn't make a best driver's car. We're looking for that perfect balance between powertrain and chassis, that perfect balance between subjective feel and objective performance, both on and off the track.
And so, with all the miles driven, the laps logged, and the tires shredded, it was time to sit down and rank each contender.
Now the SRT Viper's been a bit of a puzzle this time around. I mean, this car's gone slower than we've had it at this very track previously. And I'm not quite sure what's going on. I mean, the Viper always has this element of intimidation about it, but this car just didn't seem to hook up this time. We couldn't get a decent number out of it. And on the road, it's still just a little bit edgy. I liked it, but I was wary of it.
And that really speaks to the problem I have with the core philosophy of the Viper, and that is one of intimidation. Charging up Highway 198 in the Viper and the 911, I don't think I was going much faster in the Viper. I might have been going faster in the 911, but why is the Viper so much work? Why does it have to beat you into submission? Why does it have to be so loud and so rough? I don't really buy into that whole manliness of driving thing. It could just be nice and work well and sort of inspire you to go faster instead of beating you into submission.
Well, the Viper has tremendous performance capabilities. It generates the G's in every direction, but it's hard to get from one direction to the other direction smoothly.
Yeah.
And Angus, I think that was your definition of a good driver's car. So I love the power. I like the whole meaty feel of, having a real tough car in your hands and, you're kind of wrestling it.
Well, it is a bit like learning to wrestle an alligator, and you don't have to make too many mistakes to get in a lot of trouble wrestling alligators. So, I think the Viper makes you work too hard. It's not as fluid and linear as it should be, and for that reason, it's not best driver's car.
The Focus is the least powerful, least expensive car we have at Best Driver's Car this year. But I love the way this car drives on the road, the way it rotates when you turn into a corner, and also the power you get on exit. But we had some problems here at the track, right?
We did. I mean, the car only lasted a couple of laps and then the brakes went out to lunch. But even on the road, it's a front-wheel drive car, and yeah, you can get it to rotate and turn in, but it's still going to be slower, still going to be less fulfilling than a good rear drive car.
I like the Focus a lot. In general, great car, fun to drive. I love the way it rotates into the corner, like you said, Carlos, but the brake fluid boiled. I mean, it was just sign off, and it has tremendous inside front wheel spin. It needs a limited slip, and the shocks are just a little too much comfort for what is a very sporty car.
And I love the way it sounds, I love the way it drives, but if it doesn't have brakes at the end of the day at the track, and this car doesn't have brakes, we can't drive it home, it can't be a best driver's car.
The BMW M6 was a bit of a contradiction for me because it's a very, very powerful car, great powertrain, but it just seems way too heavy and way too inconsistent for an M car. To me, it just sort of betrayed the traditions of M cars.
Yeah, I got that feeling when I was driving it too. It's not what I expected from an M car. There was no communication. It kind of felt big and ponderous through some of the corners, and when it started to reach the area where you would start sliding it, there was no communication when it was happening and when you could save it. I did not have a good time driving this car.
I agree. I found the M6 to be very sudden. One moment it's hooked up, next minute, pow, you're sideways. Fabulous engine and transmission, beautiful car, difficult car to drive fast.
And if it's difficult to drive fast, then really it's not really a good driver's car, and I expected more from BMW's M division.
Now, from the outset, I thought this Bentley should not have been in Best Driver's Car. I mean, it weighs over 5,000 pounds. It's a Bentley, for crying out loud. It's got double pane windows. But after I drove it up the mountain road, I came down grinning ear to ear. I never thought you could place a Bentley on the road the way you can drive that car. It is hilarious.
It's got over 600 horsepower. It'll do 205 miles an hour. And up on 198, it was fantastic. But it's so quiet, you arrive at corners so much faster than you think. And then the laws of physics take over. Driving this thing quickly is a bit like having a slow waltz with a Russian weightlifter. It's great when you're both in sync, but if you get out of sync, she's going to crush you.
I love the Bentley, and I feel kind of guilty about not rating it better because it's genuinely out of place on the racetrack at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca. It has tremendous power capabilities, quiet, smoothness, a lot of luxury features, a little bit of performance stirred in, but not enough to make it a best driver's car for me.
Exactly. I think my joy out of the car is the fact that I was able to slap a Bentley around and it would look back at me and say, harder. But while it's probably the best driving Bentley, it's definitely not the best driver's car. This Vanquish is a car I love looking at and one that I love hearing as it flies by down the straight. And it's one I like driving, but at like 6 or 7 tenths. When you start pushing it, things don't go so well.
Well, it struck me as being lazy. I thought the steering was initially lazy on turn-in. I think the transmission is lazy. It just didn't strike me on the road section that we drove as a car that was really up to it. It wasn't all there, it wasn't all engaged. It was like it was off dozing somewhere.
More show than go, perhaps. I think the handling was kind of soft, kind of rolly, definitely slow to respond to the wheel, and then a tendency towards wanting to power oversteer a little bit. Had great power, like the V12.
It was one of the best drifting cars here, I think, a best driver's car, but that's only one component. And the rest of the car, I think, fell a little flat. That's why it's not going to be the best driver's car.
We're going to vanquish the Vanquish.
Yeah, there you go.
The E63 is fabulous. I mean, what's not to like about a station wagon with nearly 600 horsepower? I mean, it's almost the perfect car guy's car, right? Something you can drive really, really quickly, but it's still got room to haul the kids, haul the groceries, put a couple of Labradors in the back. I mean, what's not to like with a package like that?
You know what, I've always liked wagons for their functionality. And in performance cars, I like functionality. I mean, I don't want a fake scoop, right? And so here's a car that has all the performance of any high-performance luxury sedan, and it has that extra functionality. What I don't like is understeer. And for me, that's what brought the E63 wagon down.
Still, aside from that SLS Black Series, this E63 is one of the most ridiculous cars we've ever had at Best Driver's Car. It's a wagon that has 600 pound-feet of torque, effectively. That's nuts, and it may be one of the best driving wagons we've ever had. Still, though, compared to some of the other more sporting cars we have here, I was kind of let down by the ride height, the weight on the rear suspension, and so on, a few other things.
Look, it's incongruous. You got out of that car grinning. You know, you'd walk away from it, you'd turn around, you'd look at it and say, I did that in that? I mean, it was an adorable car. Loved it to bits, but it's not Best Driver's Car. The Nissan GT-R is just an awesome machine. I mean, every time you get into one, you think, look, what is the secret sauce? What's the black magic? What makes this car do stuff that on paper it shouldn't seem to be able to do? It sits higher, it's big, it's heavy, it's got one of the smallest engines here, but it is so fast on the road.
The secret is torque and traction and lots in equal measure. You know, this is a car that drives like nothing else. It goes down a road like nothing else. It's like a shot of adrenaline. It's absolutely insane the way it delivers power, forward thrust, and G's, but it is so relentless. It's constantly throwing G's in your face. The ride is a little rough, and it's also slower than the Black Edition we tested last year.
Well, I think the GT-R was one of the best handling track cars I've ever driven at our Streets of Willow test we did a little bit ago, comparing with the Audi. Here, for some reason, at Mazda Raceway, it understeered badly, and it held the speed back on the car. But it's accessible. Anybody could get in that car and run reasonably fast, and they're probably not going to spin it. And I think that's a real positive. But it doesn't have the feel, the things you talk about, Angus, the flow, the things that are more finesse and the finer elements of a driver's car when compared with some of the best out here.
Well, I think the issue with this car is that, you know, it costs more than the previous edition, but it actually went slower here at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca with you driving. So, you know, somehow, you know, maybe the magic's not quite working this time around, and that's why I don't think it's going to be Best Driver's Car.
Personally, the Porsche Cayman is one of my favorite sports cars of all time. There's just a balance to this car that is like nothing else. You don't have a lot of power, you don't have a lot of grip. In fact, it's a little loose, but it is so much fun, especially charging up the mountain road. And it's pretty decent here at the track too.
I mean, on 198, this was a car that you came away. This is a car you drive with your fingers You know, it's a fingertip car, it's delicate. It does everything in a pretty precise, delicate little dance. What annoys me about it though is that you just can't help but think Porsche's consciously dumbing down this car to restricting the power. The shock damping is not what it should be, just to keep the 911 ahead of it.
Well, the Cayman S is a new car this year, and it's a little more loose on entry than the last Cayman S that I tested with MotorTrend, and I still like it very, very much. In fact, it's in my top 3, personally. I think you guys are all too used to these 550 horsepower monsters to appreciate a car that's so well balanced and it's pretty darn close to a race car.
You know, personally, again, I love it, but begrudgingly I have to admit and abide by the popular vote, but it's not in the best driver's car top 3. The Jaguar F-Type impressed me probably the most out of all the cars here. As a Jaguar, I was expecting it'd be okay, but no, this car was solid, tight, powerful. It sounded amazing. It was really nice on the road. Maybe a little bit too powerful though.
Well, the Jaguar had a big difference in its handling between off throttle and on throttle. It was not balanced all the way through a corner. Off throttle it was a little pushy, the front was not real happy. As soon as you touch that throttle, boom, it wants to get sideways with traction control off. It just won't put power down.
Now, as you guys know, I love a car that you can take sideways, but this thing was a little too over the top on the track without traction control, even for me. I mean, this was like a Shelby Cobra that had been to charm school, and I think it kind of overwhelmed the chassis. I would have liked to have had that same chassis, perhaps with the 390 horsepower supercharged V6 instead of that big V8.
You know, as is, the F-Type with the V8, the supercharged V8 with 500 horsepower or whatever, it's a lesson in throttle management and throttle control. If you want to be very good on managing your throttle, that's the car you need to drive. Because if you don't, you're off the track backwards. And that's why it's not going to be best driver's car.
So that leaves us with 3 cars. The Mercedes-Benz SLS, the Porsche 911 C4S, and the Audi R8 V10 Plus. Interestingly enough, these are 3 completely different approaches to the way of building a best driver's car. We've got one rear engine car, we've got one front engine car, we've got one mid-engine car. I mean, how different could the mix be?
It is quite the mix. And the SLS is just insane that they can improve the standard version so well. I do feel though that while it is faster, it does have some core issues with the SLS, and that is rear traction, and that it can get a little snappy when you push it hard. The Audi R8 and the 911 are very similar in some ways. The 911 has this beautiful sense, the way it goes down the road, it just flows. It's hard to describe, but it's like you can just outline the friction circle with it. The R8, the powertrain in the R8, that thing just sings to 9,000 RPM. It's wonderful.
Yeah, the R8 sings. I'm seduced by the engine and transmission in that car, and they're just terrific. And the 911 is kind of the one that does everything well without being an exceptional car in any way, in my opinion. The SLS Black Series is the brutal performance car of the group.
Well, if you look at the road section, so all of these cars went up and down 198 very well. You felt very comfortable in them. Probably the SLS was perhaps the edgiest of the 3. But in the 911 and in the R8, the body control on those cars was terrific. Over those bumps, you felt, the car wasn't going to do anything that was going to surprise you. You weren't going to get any violent lateral movements out of it. Here on the track, all 3 cars are quicker than their predecessors. I mean, the C4S was quicker than the 2-wheel drive 991 we had here last year. And the Audi R8 V10 is faster than the V10 we've tested previously, and the SLS, I mean, it's almost 4 seconds a lap quicker than the car you drove here a few years back. I mean, that's really good. We're getting real improvement on all 3 of these cars. We've got 3 fabulous cars, 3 very different approaches to the idea of building a real driver's car, but only one of them can be the winner.
noise. Sounds like you're on Mulsanne Straight at Le Mans.
The Porsche 911 Carrera 4S is MotorTrend's 2013 best driver's car. It's the combination of the way it drives on the road and on the track. It's stellar in both arenas, allowing a driver to really explore themselves and the car. So that wraps up MotorTrend's 2013 Best Drivers Car competition. Stay tuned for next year where we're going to have even more incredible cars duking it out.